Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the worst arc in Sword Art Online. Hi, Alfheim.
Funny enough, Alfheim Online was actually based on a real MMORPG.
I thought people didn't like fairy dance.
No one likes Fairy Dance now.
Fairy Dance is an awful arc, but Alfheim Online, the game it's based on, has some interesting aspects to it.
But story and characters-wise, it's absolutely atrocious. Ugh.
Oh yes, it is absolutely atrocious.
So Alfheim is worse than fairy dance.
No, Alfheim is the game they go into. Fairy Dance is just the name of the arc.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, okay, they're the same thing. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
What does it say?
Alfheim Online, the game that arc is based on, is this big, grand, PvP-focused game where all the races have their own factions. And it's the kind of, really dedicated MMORPG design you would have seen around back then. And even the flight mechanic is something that comes from a specific game with that specific kind of build. Although I think the actual game that it was based on only had 3 factions or something.
So
That-
they the characters exist in more than one game in Sword Art Online.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's complicated.
Here's the basic rundown. SAO begins with the first VR
Full dive.
MMO ever made. That would be Sword Art Online, the game called Sword Art Online. That takes up the first half of the first season because the original arc was like one novel written for a contest. And then the second arc is Fairy Dance, which takes up the second half of the first season. And that's after they all get out of the survival game. A bunch of people were still locked in their comas, and eventually, through shenanigans, Kirito finds out that it's connected with another game that was released while they were still trapped. And basically, there's this big, grand PvP-focused game with all these cool mechanics and factions and
And
world
none of that
features
matters
and-
because Jesus Kun is here to wreck all your shit.
Yeah, none of that matters because Kirito makes a beeline from the starting point to the center of the world and basically wins immediately. Yes. So, yeah. But the game itself does factor into a few stories afterward and gets a bit of a chance to shine in those games. So, a little bit overcast by the fact that after that arc, a bunch of people who got hold of SAO's rights just added Aincrad to Alfheim's world. So
And I'm sure the game that killed tons of people getting revived totally went over well with the public.
Well, I know if playing Tetris caused let's just say people to get a stroke. Some people would still be like, hey, only some people got a stroke playing Tetris. I could probably still keep playing it and it'd be fine, right?
Probably.
well,
but-
it wasn't the game itself that caused people to die. To be fair, it was the madman who trapped everyone in their helmets. Now that they've replaced the helmets with helmets that can't go over a certain level of power, then they were it was fine. That was the thing about the second VR headset, is that it was deliberately designed to not be able to...
It just begs the question of why the first headset was allowed to be marketed in the first place if it could do that. But
Well,
sure.
because because the company that released it didn't have any reason to suspect that anyone would turn off the safety features inside the helmet.
Yeah, but if you weren't going to use it for anything, why is it there?
Did your mother speak
Well,
of this realm?
Kayaba himself invented the headset, so I imagine he kept his mouth shut about it.
Probably.
There's probably-
It's just one of those things where it's like every answer to the question just leads to another question.
Yeah, actually, this is one of the things that SAO does right most of the time is all the hypotheticals surrounding the technology. The books are filled with really interesting facts and tidbits about the headset and the technology surrounding it. It's actually kind of fascinating. The new lower powered headset can't block out real world sensation as well. So there's this. So as a peripheral for the second VR headset, there are these gel beds that you can just sleep in to just block out sensation. they're extremely expensive and none of the main characters can afford them, but it's a thing that exists in that world. And
Wait, so why
that
buy
kind
a
of stuff is
budget
just-
headset and then buy a
It's
non-budget?
it's not a budget headset. It's a headset made specifically to not replicate the problems of the first one.
Yeah, it's the Atmosphere was designed with two key features. One, the VR thing that connects to your brain is slightly lower powered, so it can't fry your brain, even if the safety features are turned off. And it also automatically deactivates itself if it detects like your heart rate going too high or something. So basically, it's made to be the anti-SAO machine. And they had to do that because SAO almost killed VR gaming entirely. So,
They do not concern us.
and then the Alfheim incident almost killed VR gaming entirely again. So it's kind of amazing that a third arc even happened. But, like, all of that stuff in SAO is really fun and interesting to read about. The anime skips over all of it, which, you know, is part of the reason I don't like the show. But,
How many books are there now? There's like 1 million, right?
let's see, there's 2 for the Aincrad arc, 1 for the main arc, and 1 for the short stories. There's 2 for Fairy Dance, 2 for Phantom Bullet. That's the first 2. 1 for Mother's Rosario, 1 for a bunch of short stories. That's 8 for the first 2 seasons. And then there's 10 for Alicization, and I think maybe 6 for Progressive now. So it's like 26 books long now at my last check.
Mind you, they're also light novels, so they're like 100 to 200 pages long each. So
Yeah, with the exception of like the first Progressive novel, which is absurdly long for some reason. Oh wait, now I know exactly why it was absurdly long. It's because he wrote one story for the anime, and then he wrote another story for the novel, and just sort of packaged them together. So the result was a novel that was like 1.5 novels long. But, yeah, it's a long series.
we have to remind people in the audience that the web novel that it was based off of and kind of revised over time started in like 2001.
Yeah, that's like part of the reason.
That's why Alicization is That's why Alicization's power structure is basically just Bleach.
Yes, it is. And like I think Mother's Basement brought this up first, but like Alice herself was like the first ripoff of that one character from Fate. What's her name?
Saber.
Yeah, her.
Wait, is that
Not-
is that from like is Fate Stay Night from like two? Oh no, you know what? It is. I remember because it's got the
Fate is a late '90s PC game.
yeah. Because I remember because the show's from the 2000s, and so it has the mid 2000s CG dragon instead of a sex scene.
Yeah, the Studio Dean animated version of the Fate route is from 2006.
God,
Yeah.
you're old.
You're old.
Stop! I don't like being old. How do I stop it?
This gate looks annoying.
It is annoying.
But like, okay, when it comes to the SAO novels, one of the things that you kind of have to remember is that because it's such an old series, a lot of the game design elements in the series itself are based on really old MMOs. So whenever you like look at Aincrad or Alfheim and think, wow, that's hideously inconvenient, why would anyone design it like that? That's because that's how MMOs were designed at the time.
Yeah, because people were used to playing like EverQuest.
So when you see a scene where like people are arguing over like grinding spots or something, it's because back then when you killed a monster, that monster stayed dead for hours, you know? Like literal hours. You could go through a dungeon and find the corpses of the monsters from the last party that passed through.
That idea did lead to a decent scene in the Progressive movie that I got dragged to by a friend. So
Did the Progressive movie already come out?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's I actually need to watch that because that novel was like probably the closest that SAO gets to being genuinely good. But like, how was that movie?
About as good as SAO could ever reasonably get. I mean, it helps that our change in perspective character is Asuna instead of Kirito, who's way more interesting than Jesus Kun.
Oh yeah, Asuna gets a lot of great screen time in the progressive novels.
And they also managed to make death in SAO actually scary.
Okay, so
Well, that's
instead of the whole tragic melodrama they usually use it for.
what story does the movie cover? Does it go past Ilfang or does it just end with Ilfang?
It's just the first floor.
Yeah, because that's what the progressive novel was originally. It was the story of Ilfang, and then when they did the episode for that part, they cut out all the interesting stuff that the author actually wrote for that floor and just had the boss fight. Okay.
So you guys keep on calling it the progressive stuff, and I just keep on thinking that Sword Art Online is going to try to sell me car insurance.
It's one of those kind of titles where like the writer like knows the basic meaning of the English word, but is using it in a context that no English speaker would ever use it in. But the title just basically indicates progress up through Einkrad's floors, because the Einkrad arc in the original novel skipped up to floor 70-something, and just ended the arc in the first novel, whereas the progressive series is going one floor at a time up the castle.
Oh, so they're taking the long way this time.
Yeah,
okay.
and there's all kinds of interesting shenanigans in the story, like the first scam ever devised by players, which was like a scam to trick people into thinking that the blacksmith broke their weapon so that the blacksmith could keep the weapon and sell it.
That's actually genius. Oh man.
Yeah. And they talk about like like Kirito reflecting on this talks about all the exploits that players found during the beta that don't work anymore and all of that kind of stuff, griefers and whatnot. But like it's interesting to bring that stuff up in this kind of story because like they're trapped in a video game, so obviously the psychology is different. You need to be in a specific kind of headspace to still give your players that kind of trouble in a life or death situation, you know. And all of this eventually leads into the beginnings of what would eventually become the Laughing Coffin Guild, which is one of the most interesting little niggles of the Sword Art Online story.
That they never bring up.
Which is fitting because it all happens off screen, yeah. Laughing Coffin is one of the most awkward things in SAO because it's like...
You have to... It's one of those things where to talk about it all, you basically have to admit that Asuna and Kirito just straight up killed people.
Well, yeah, that's actually, like, straight up brought up as a story element. But the thing is, Laughing Coffin only first comes up in SAO as a major story element in the third arc, which is 2 arcs after SAO ended. So you sort of flash back to stuff that happened in between stories to find out about this guild that was deliberately murdering other players because they thought it was fun. And like the leader of this guild comes up in Alicization as one of the main bad guys, but it's like all of this would be way more effective if we actually saw the arc where Laughing Coffin was a thing. But all of that stuff happened off screen before the main arc of the first novel. So one of the interesting things about Progressive is that we're actually seeing this guild being built up by the players who began it, and all of this would be really interesting if we didn't already know that the leader of the guild was a massive anime cliche in human form.
He's a literal clown in the game.
I mean,
like a clown,
like
as in like Ronald McDonald kind of clown.
Kind of.
Oh god.
I really don't like Pooh, like, at all.
Hey, Winnie the Pooh is a childhood icon. All right, you shut your mouth.
No, his screen name is Pooh, and I'm not really sure why that is. It's spelled in a weird way. But, basically he's this half-American, half-Japanese guy with a massive grudge against Japanese people who saw the news reports about SAO and deliberately put on a headset before the police came around and took them all away so that he could jump into the game and kill people. So, already kind of crazy.
Okay.
But, like, the only screen time he ever gets is as this arbitrary addition to the bad guy group in Alicization, where he just sort of happens to be part of them. and his entire motivation for causing shit is that he recognizes Kirito and wants to fight him again. So, like, the Laughing Coffin storyline is absurdly interesting, but the guy driving it is one of the most, like, the fucking most uninteresting characters in any series ever.
And this is coming from the series with Fairy Dance in it.
Yeah, I mean, the guy who starts the Laughing Coffin storyline in Progressive is this guy in a coif named Mort, and he's 10 times as interesting as Pooh will ever be. So, and he's just like the first guy who's supposed to be like the introduction to the guild. How did I end up going on a 15-minute tangent?
Because this place is called Alfheim.
Oh right, yeah, that's what started this.
It was
isn't it?
At least kind of on topic. It attempted to be on topic.
I went on too long because I've read too many of these SAO books and I've got too many thoughts about them. And it's hard to talk about those thoughts because whenever someone mentions SAO, they focus entirely on the bad parts of the anime, which, to be fair, is 90% of the anime. But, you know. And then whenever someone tries to talk about the books, it's usually in the context of, read the books, they're better. Well, they kind of are, but it's not like
they're not that much better.
It's not like they lack the flaws. It's more like the anime has the same flaws, but none of the good parts.
Listen, watch this. It's still bad, but hear me out here.
Even then, I'm more interested in SAO as like an amalgam of its good parts and bad parts because I'm an amateur writer myself, and I find it interesting to examine a flawed work of literature.
It's sometimes just it's partially why like The Room is popular and stuff. It's like sometimes you can learn just as much from a really terrible work as you can a really good one.
That's true, but The Room is also okay. Actually, I was gonna say The Room is also funny. New Year's 2019. One of the last times I saw my friends in the real world. We watched The Room. It's not so bad it's good. It's so bad I hate it.
Yeah, it's an actually bad movie. You only see the out of context funny bits.
Yeah, pretty much.
But SAO isn't like completely irredeemably awful. It's more like a combination of aspects that just flat out don't work with aspects that do very much work. And that's an interesting thing to unpack because like you get both you get a package that includes stuff that's done well and stuff that isn't, and it's instructive in both directions, if that makes any sense.